Hi everyone, welcome to 3D Stroke Coding YouTube channel. So today we're going to talk about Python programming language, and these are some of the things we'll be talking about. We'll be looking at the identifiers, keywords, operators, and expressions. We'll also talk about operators and variables. We will also look at expressions using operators, and then we also look at the type function that is used to identify data types of values, and we'll finalize with the use of indentation and comments in writing Python program. Right now I'm using Visual Studio Code. You can head to the official Visual Studio Code site where you can download. I have a video for that. You can check it in my channel. So this is my main folder. So how do we create folders and files? When you hover your mouse here, you'll be able to see the icon for file generation, the icon for folder creation also. So we will start with the identifier. So for that, I'll just click on the Python and then click on the file. So this is my text file, identifier.p.txt. So this is where I will be adding things to do with identifier. So it is open. So this is all about identifier and beginning. So if you want to hide this part, you left click here and you remain with a nice window with the contents. So what is an identifier? It is a name you define within predefined parameters that is used in naming concepts in Python. But before coming up, or while you are in that process of coming up with it, you have to follow predefined rules or parameters put in place so that you can arrive at a valid name. So what is the purpose of this identifier? You find that it is used in naming concepts in Python like variables, user-defined functions, classes, tuples, and lists. Another important point as to why it has to follow predefined parameters, it is because eventually it will act as an address for memory location where values are stored. So it will act as a memory location where values are stored. Come up with this identifier. Now this is the place where we have to look at those predefined parameters that guide on how to come up with this identifier. That brings us to the rules. So we have the rules used, or I can just say predefined parameters here. Parameter number one, identifier can be a combination of letter, capital A to Z, small a to Z, digits 0 to 9, or an underscore. If you look at this rule or this parameter, you can come up with even 1,000 words. But now this parameter has some exception. There's exceptions to this parameter. And the exception number one is that you cannot begin with a digit, but the digit can be at the end or anywhere, for that matter, but not at the beginning. For example, if I say total, or I start with 90, let's say 90 total. This is invalid. But if I say total 90, this is valid. So you can see you can always put 90 at the end, not in the beginning of the letters. So that is the first exception. And another exception, that is there, you find that spaces are not allowed. Space between 2 or 3 words is not allowed. So let's look at this exception. Supposing you want to come up with a value, let's say with 2 words, total, max. So when you write it this way, there is a space in this middle section. This space, according to parameter number one, makes this identifier invalid because the Python interpreter will treat this as two separate identifiers. So to make this as a single identifier, you need to, that brings us to the exception number 2, or I can just join it here. Instead, where I can say instead use underscore between them. So that being said, to make this a valid identifier, I will say, to make this a valid identifier, I'll say total max valid, as you can see. Now this is a valid identifier. Another very important parameter also take into account is that rule number 2. Special symbols cannot be part of an identifier. Special symbols cannot be part of an identifier. So identifier, what are some of these special symbols that cannot be part of an identifier? Example of these special symbols, we have exclamation mark, we have at, we have things like asterisk, we have bracket, we have hashtag. These are some of the special symbols. Even the question mark is here. They cannot be part of an identifier. You cannot say at total in on itself like this is invalid. Instead, you will say total. This is valid. So this is invalid, and here this is valid. This is invalid, here this is valid. So when you write it this way, identify, but when you put special symbols like at in front of total, these will treat this identifier as invalid. And also you have another very important rule, that is number 3. Reserved words can't be used individually as identifiers. So for example, examples of these reserved words, we have things like if, else, print, input, for, not, finally, pass, and local, del, lambda, none, except, false, else, is. All this, in total we have 33 reserved words. So what are these? What do we mean by the term reserved words? So you find that reserved word is a word with special meaning to the Python interpreter. It's like let's say copyrighted words. You cannot use them in on itself. You can either combine it with some other word. You can think about it like this. Identify, these are the names you define yourself using predefined rules that are there. This is not the word you use that was already under the reserved words category, because these are words chosen primarily to be used inside the Python. They have special meaning. So if you use them individually as an identifier as opposed to the name, you defining the name outside this category, that name will be flagged as invalid. So I can say if results, this is valid, but if I say this is valid, but if I say if, this is invalid automatically. So those are some of the rules we have, and maybe the last bonus rule, one of the most important, also important rule we need to consider is that identifier names should be meaningful related to the task at hand. So depending with the program you're writing, identifier names should relate to the program you're writing, because if you are writing a program that is talking about grading and awarding marks, and then you are using totally different variables, even you're saying something like so you're saying something like a, so it's good to avoid using individual letters as identifier names, because it makes hard to know exactly what the program is all about. So if you say u equals to 100, and here you come and say total max equals to 100, so there's a difference there between the first one and the second one. Somebody can understand what the second line means as opposed to what the first line means. So that is all about identifiers. In the next video we'll be coming to check how, so you can see the difference. The first one, you cannot understand this 100 stands for what, but on the second line, you can be able to distinguish, whereby you can say this 100 stands for total max. So those are some of the rules that are used, the predefined rules that are used in defining identifier. Now I have a task here, and the task is this: create 10 identifiers of your choice. Or I can just say define 10 identifiers of your choice and send me in the comment section. So you can create or define 10 identifiers of your choice and send me in the comments section. We can review together and see how to go about it. So this is the first part of Python. That is the identifier part of it. On the second lesson that we will be doing, we will be seeing how identifier becomes an address in memory location. So this is the second lesson. We'll be trying to find out how do we create a variable out of an identifier. So thanks again for watching. This is a released recording channel. Please subscribe and feel free to like and comment. Thank you once again. Welcome next time.